Get ready for eMoment. For our English listeners, eMoment brings you all the latest news in politics, economics, science, technology, health, and culture. eMoment, they will discuss the national and international topics of the week with some guests and interviews. eMoment, it's every Sunday at 8:30 p.m. on iRADIO 90.3, your radio here and everywhere. eMoment on iRADIO 90.3.
Welcome back to another edition of eMoment. I am your host, Moustapha GABAR. On the menu today, an exclusive interview with Dimitri Sanga, Regional Director of UNESCO for West Africa, Sahel. The topic is education. As the coronavirus keeps spreading around the world, 90% of learners are affected by school closures. A never-seen-before disruption of education that prompted UNESCO to launch the Global Education Coalition to facilitate inclusive learning opportunities for children and youth. Here is a message from Audrey Azoulay, UNESCO's Director General, speaking on the matter.
As of today, March 25, over 1.4 billion learners worldwide are affected by school closures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly overnight, we have entered a radically new age of learning. Schooling on our planet has gone virtual, delivered over airwaves, and broadband has just stopped. The starting point is not the same for all. The greatest danger is that children from marginalized backgrounds will lose out on their education, and we cannot let this happen. The scale of the challenge demands innovation, partnership, solidarity. We need to act urgently and work together as one. This is why UNESCO is launching the COVID-19 Global Education Coalition today. We have on board members of the UN family, civil society organizations, media companies, IT partners. They have eagerly stepped forward to share their talent, tools and technology to tackle content and connectivity gaps. Together we will help countries design and deploy innovative and context-sensitive solutions that leave no one behind. Education cannot stop. It is a fundamental right. Let's be sure to keep it that way, through this crisis and well beyond, and to draw as well the lessons of this crisis for the future of education. Thank you very much.
iRADIO 90.3.
Our guest today is Dimitri Sanga, the Regional Director of UNESCO for West Africa, Sahel. He's on the phone with us today to tell us more about the Global Education Coalition.
Good morning, Mr. Sanga.
Good morning.
We're honored to have you on our station, iRADIO 90.3. Could you start by telling us a little bit more about you and your agency?
Yes, good morning and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dimitri Sanga. I'm the Regional Director of UNESCO for West Africa, Sahel, which is an office that covers 7 countries: Senegal, Cabo Verde, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger.
Over half of the world's population is under lockdown or on some kind of containment measure. How has that impacted your work at UNESCO?
You know, as any other organization, we have been impacted by this lockdown, first and foremost because of the social distanciation that has been required as a measure taken by government. So we needed to, first we started by keeping on-site, when I mean on-site in our office, only essential staff. The other staff were teleworking. And then with the increasing number of cases, we decided to put everybody on telework. Fortunately, we are using technology and so far it's working well. We are still providing services to our member states through teleworking. So this is the main impact that it has had on the work we are doing. You know that we are working on education, natural sciences, social and human sciences, culture, and communication. These are some of the areas that are very important to help our member states to deal with the current response to the crisis but also to start thinking about the aftermath of the crisis.
In 191 countries around the world, schools are closed due to the pandemic, and at least 1.5 billion students are away from the education system. What has been your organization's response to help governments, teachers, and parents cope with the situation?
Let me first say that out of the 1.5 billion children who are out of school, if we look at the continent in Africa, it's around 300 million children who are not at school, going from the lower level up to higher education. Of course, we saluted the measures that have been taken by the government to make sure that, first and foremost, they protect children, but we also thought about these children being at home with parents. How are they going to keep on learning? And then for that, we started at the global level. Our Director General, Audrey Azoulay, has put in place a coalition which brings together not only UN agencies, but some other international organizations, but also private sector that is providing digital solutions like Google, Microsoft, and you name it, Huawei, and so on. These coalitions brings together people who can come up with content so that children can continue learning from home, but also who provide some digital solutions. Because what we are trying to do is to make sure that we have a mix of tools that we use, including the traditional TV and community radios, but also nowadays we also use distance learning because we can create space where both teachers and students can meet virtually. So limitation that we have from radio and TV, whereby students can only be learning during the broadcasting period of the course. When you put digital solution in place, the same material that will be broadcasted through radio and TV can also be put on a platform so that a learner can access it when he wants. And then there will be also interaction between the learner and the teacher.
In sub-Saharan Africa, we know that about 99% of students don't have access to a computer and 82% of them don't have access to internet. What are the alternatives to online classes, especially in rural areas, to ensure that education is not discontinued?
Unfortunately, as you know, in Africa, ICT penetration is not that high. Even if we can see that mobile penetration is quite important, but it's not every household that has access to a mobile device or internet access. So we thought about all this and came up with some of the solutions proposed, some of the solutions including just polycopying the material, the same material that will be posted into a digital platform that can be sent to rural areas. So these are a kind of a set of solutions that we have put in place. And then we also made sure that we can call upon internet service providers and so on so that they can enlarge their coverage so that we don't leave any student behind. These are some of the solutions that we have provided to the government. Because let me be clear here, it's not UNESCO who is doing this, it's the countries themselves, the government, who are at the forefront. We are only providing support as international organizations.
On the local level, how is your office in Dakar helping the Senegalese government?
The first and most important thing that we did is that we discussed with government officials in charge of the education sector. Because of the crisis, they had their usual plan going on. But because of this crisis, they had first and foremost to revise their plan. So we work with them hand in hand to help them to come up with contingency plans. Second, we brought the coalition I was referring to from the global level at the country level. I managed to get Microsoft and some of the UN agencies like UNICEF, UNHCR, and some bilateral and multilateral partners like Canada and other countries that are dealing with supporting Senegal in education. We built the same coalition at the national level, and then we discussed with the minister in charge of education to try to see how we can help them. So we have started working with them, each of the technical and financial partners bringing in what they can according to their comparative advantage. And then you have certainly learned that the Ministry of National Education launched what they call tele-école, which is broadcasting courses for children using TV. And then we are working with Microsoft now to try to train teachers and as well as students to use the platform. As I was telling you, we need a combination of traditional ways of doing, but also with digital solutions. So these are the kind of strategic orientation we are providing to the government so that they can continue to provide education services to children.
Do you think that distance learning is going to be used more broadly in Senegal after the coronavirus pandemic?
Just to give you an example, when we were talking about distance learning in the past, it was seen as a luxury because we, as you know, there's a virtual university in Senegal. I know that Burkina Faso also has a virtual university. But it was touching only a limited number of people. It was just a way of jumping into the 21st century. But when we got issues in the Sahel, like regarding security, and have many children on the road, this was no longer a luxury. The only way to reach out to these children who are internally displaced in their own countries because of insecurity was to use digital solutions. So more and more, this digital solution is becoming important. And the latest is this coronavirus disease crisis. It's showing us that we need to prepare our country to be ready for the next occurrence of this kind of crisis in the future. It is not when the crisis is there, we start looking at ICT penetration or coverage of internet in the country. So while we are dealing with the current situation, we also are thinking about making sure that countries are prepared so that if this kind of thing occur in the future, they are ready.
UNESCO's regional office has recently held webinars for journalists. What was the aim of those workshops, and was it to help fight the spread of fake news?
You know, this is one of the areas where really we can make the difference at this short-term response to the coronavirus disease. You know, it's still fears, anxiety, and then with social media, everybody can turn out to be a journalist and then can just come up with news or information that will feed the fear and the anxiety to people. So for that not to happen, we needed to work with professional journalists, train them how they can make sure that they use information that comes from dependable sources like WHO or any other information, so that people have access to the right information to avoid hearing fear and anxiety in the society, so that people can take rightful decisions. Fake news, as we know, are more and more common nowadays. So we train journalists around that, but also the safety of journalists themselves. during this period where government are taking stringent measures to confine people. So we needed them to come up with the right information, but also themselves to be prepared to safely go around and then continue to provide information on the crisis. So I think this is another very important aspect of the work that we are doing with journalists.
How is the pandemic affecting the cultural sector? Is UNESCO helping artists, museums, and other cultural actors during this time where events cannot be held?
The first and foremost effect of this coronavirus disease on the culture sector is that once we have decided that people are confined at home and public gatherings are no longer there, this is one of the area that has been touched very seriously with that. So you no longer have concerts, you no longer museums are closed, biosphere reserves and so on are closed. So this, first and foremost, economically, these people, it's a very serious industry that was using so many people working in that industry who are no longer working. So there's a loss of income. Most of these people are at risk of being under the poverty line, as you can say. So what we are doing as UNESCO is first and foremost trying to use artists to combat this disease, because these people are well known, and if they can send messages into the population on how to deal with this crisis that we have, so this is the first way we are using them. Now we are also thinking about the aftermath of the crisis. These creative industries need to work differently. They need also to embrace technology. Nowadays, we can keep on visiting museums, but in the comfort of our house through digital connection and so on. So we need to think through with government in the future how to make sure that we use technology to ensure continuity of services like visiting museum or some other very important places. So these are the kind of things that we do. But I think the most important one in the short term is to use the notoriety of artists and all those working in the creative industry to make sure that we spread the right information that will help people to protect themselves during this period of crisis.
What kind of message or information should these artists help to spread? And do you have a message for the people at home listening to us?
Yes, I think that the most important thing is that we don't have any cure so far, neither any vaccine against this disease. The only way that we can protect ourselves is to follow the prescriptions of our scientific community. That means we need to wash our hands as much as we can using soap. We need to observe social distancing. If we want to go out for very serious reason to go and then buy something or whatever, we need to protect ourselves by using a mask if we can. And most importantly, let's stay at home if we don't have anything to do outside. This is the only way we can prevent the transmission of this disease. At UNESCO, for children who are stranded at home, parents and teachers, we are working on these different measures of distance learning, but also we have already started thinking about reopening of schools when they will happen. How are we going to go about? Some of the children were supposed to move from a level of education, primary to secondary. How are we going to deal with that? So we are working with the government. They have been very responsive so far to deal not only with the current crisis, but we are also thinking about sustainable education system. On the front of sciences, we have had webinars with ministers in charge of research and innovation across the world. And then we are thinking in ways of dealing with ethics related to this. If ever there's a vaccine coming in, the trial of vaccine and so on should follow ethical rules that are recognized internationally. And also, I think it's a great opportunity for Africa to make sure that we provide our researchers with what is needed for them to come up with homegrown solutions to these kind of global problems. And finally, the role of journalists. We will continue to work with them, but what will make the difference is each and every citizen has to think that because we don't have a cure, because we don't have a vaccine, we need to respect social distancing so that we can prevent the spread of this disease. This is the latest message that I will give people who are listening to us today. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the work of UNESCO and other partners.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanga.
iRADIO 90.3.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Dimitri Sanga, Regional Director of UNESCO for West Africa Sahel.
Quote of the week on eMoment.
We end this episode with a quote from John W. Gardner. Much education today is monumentally ineffective. All too often, we're giving young people cut flowers when we should be teaching them to grow their own plants.
eMoment on iRADIO 90.3.
That's it for this week. I was your host, Moustapha Gabar Job, and I would like to thank Samba Bousso for the technical support. See you next week.